presentation I'm giving today is titled The USA 2016 Presidential Election and How Astrologers Got It Right. How astrology got it right, but most astrologers missed it. So in today's presentation, I want to start by going over some principles, some beliefs I have regarding forecasting versus prediction. And then we're going to go into some of the issues involved in forecasting or prediction of presidential elections. For instance, one of the big issues we have is finding the correct birth time of candidates. Another one would be determining what are the correct charts to use. We also have astrological issues of determining a winner, most popular vote versus the most electoral college votes. There's also the issue of personal bias. We're going to go over that too. That's very important in how astrologers view presidential elections. So we'll be looking at charts of individual candidates, the charts that relate to the voting public. I'll also cover studies, just a few basic ones because this is a short webinar, but studies that show a correspondence to US elections, such as the chart of the US dollar corresponding to the party that has a higher probability of winning elections in the past. And then I'll give my concluding remarks. So I'd like to begin by saying, first off, astrology is always right. And actually, even that's a little bit misleading, because actually it's not that astrology is always right, it's more that astrology just is. Astrology is like meteorology. It has nothing to do with being right or wrong. It's a measurement of what is and provides a model that can be used to explain, even forecast, based on probabilities in the future that are based on patterns that have been observed in the past. So what those probabilities are that lead to forecast depends on how the astrologer analyzes the current setup or positions in the heavens at any given moment. And that's not only true for astrology, but it's also true for meteorology or weather person. The forecast is not always right, but the probabilities they give can be helpful to you, the listener, in making a decision whether or not to plan an activity or make a decision. Now, I also want to state right at the beginning that I believe most professional astrologers, like most weather people, usually get it right when they take the approach that their models of astrology can be used as a tool for forecasting, outcomes, but not predicting outcomes, especially when they apply the principles based on actual studies that offer high probabilities, which themselves are based upon high rates of frequencies of occurrence in the past. Very important that we understand that. Now, in many cases, these can also come from observations. Forecasts can also come from observations by astrologers based on their own personal experiences. And those experiences usually comply with generally accepted astrological principles. However, it's also important, I think, to note that no astrological signature, no astrology factor has 100% inevitability as to the outcome. And those who misunderstand this principle, I don't think they really understand what astrology is or how it works. Or worse, they may even have a greater need for what Eric Berne, the founder of transactional psychology, referred to as personal recognition hunger. The need to protect, they have more of that. I'm suggesting that some astrologers perhaps have a greater personal recognition hunger for themselves and to protect the integrity of astrology as a profession of study. And yet the concept of prediction, as we all know, has become embedded in the study of astrology over the course of many centuries. The idea that the public thinks of astrology as a predictive tool or prediction is the most valuable aspect of astrology, I think that attitude has begun to change. It's slow, but it began to change. And I think it began to change with the renaissance of modern astrology that began in the late 1960s. And I think that happened when astrology began becoming wedded to psychology. And the idea of predictability started transforming through the efforts of a new breed of astrologers known as psychological astrology, such as Dane Rudger. And he's one who purported, these psychologists purported, psychological astrologer reported that people had choices. And the astrologer was not the choice maker, but rather the person who could reveal choices, who could reveal options available to clients as seen through the horoscope. So astrologers with a psychological bent in their practice were choice revealers and not choice makers. And this allowed their clients to make their choices available through the knowledge that the astrologer would give them and the understanding that came from that knowledge of the astrological themes that are present at the time, based on transits, based on progressions to their birth chart. Still, the idea of astrology that it can be used as a tool for predicting events and outcomes, that still persists. You see several astrologers today, even professional astrologers, who claim to be able to predict horse races, sports events, even election outcomes, even financial markets, which, as you know, is my profession. So in today's professional astrology, there has been and continues to be a great debate as to whether astrology can actually predict events or outcomes of such human activities as elections. I do believe that the study of astrology is a valuable tool that offers insight. It can offer understanding to any subject at any time, including elections, financial markets, and current events. And additionally, there are studies that demonstrate a correlation, not a causation. That's very important to understand. I think astrology is correlation, not causation, between astrological factors and a higher rate of frequency to certain outcomes than the norm. But not to the level, and we should never expect it, and we should not be held to that standard or hold each other to that standard, not to the level of 100% certainty. And without that standard, astrology cannot truly be considered a predictive tool, because prediction to me is 100%. Has to imply 100% unless you qualify it in some way. So what is astrology? What is its value to society? Now, I define astrology as a study of cycles in the cosmos that correlate with cycles in human activity, even natural activity. So in this context, astrology is used as a tool for understanding, awareness, and insight in order to help a client